I'm Charlotte Allen. I'm here to talk to you about shifting the dial on DEI. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a mixed-race woman. I've got curly hair. I've got a black dress with flowers on and black trainers because the NEC is far too big to walk around in heels. My background is recruitment, predominantly within financial services, and my career has almost completely been within RPO solutions. This week is actually my 9-year anniversary at AMS, where I joined as a media specialist. I previously worked as a recruiter and sourcer for clients like Deutsche Bank, BlackRock, Societe Generale. At AMS, I have supported a number of different clients, but predominantly most of my time has been working with Barclays in a number of ever-changing solutions. So I started off at AMS in attraction and engagement, but I covered sourcing, talent community management. I did a secondment in the US as a resourcing lead for their ops and tech business, which was definitely an experience for a DEI person. I currently lead, I'm on parental leave at the moment, so be kind to me. But when I'm not on parental leave, I lead the tech and innovation function, as well as, of course, DEI, which has been a passion of mine throughout my entire career. So today, I'm going to talk about why DEI is important. I'm pretty sure, I hope the whole room knows that, but I find that sometimes saying it's the right thing to do doesn't always engage some of those more tricky stakeholders. I've got a few solutions around things that can support throughout the candidate journey, tying in some of my recent experience in recruitment tech, and then it wouldn't be a talk. I forgot to press the button. Ta-da! Oh, I'm wearing the same dress. That's fine. It wouldn't be a talk from me if we didn't also talk about mindset and how to engage and inspire people. Recruitment is a people business after all, and so not all of our solutions and all of our problems can be solved with technology and with process changes. Sometimes we do have to think about hearts and minds. So let's start. Why is a diverse workforce beneficial to companies? So my dad always says, cash is king, and that's my mantra. So most of these stats are in fact based on the fact that companies are more productive, they're more innovative, they're more profitable, and essentially make more money if they have a diverse team. I'm sure we're all familiar with the famous McKinsey report. I think the last one was Diversity Wins in 2020, and the really famous stat which was companies in the top quartile of gender diversity on executive teams are 25% more likely to experience above average profitability than peer companies in the fourth quartile. Now that's been contested quite a bit, but a number of different sources now support the McKinsey report. The stat from McKinsey is gender focused, but this is actually beaten by ethnic diversity, which is 36% more likely to outperform those in the fourth quartile in terms of financial performance. Inclusive teams are over 35% more productive. Diverse teams make better decisions 87% of the time. Diverse companies are more likely, 70% more likely to capture new markets. I mean, the stats do really go on. In fact, companies with ethnically and culturally diverse boards are 43% more likely to experience higher profits. Now, of course, on a practical level, I think it's worth looking at the demographics, right? In the 10 years between the 2011 and the 2021 censuses, the percentage of our population that is white British has gone down by over 6%. And this is likely to exponentially increase as the years go on. In the UK, 15.7 million women aged 16 and over were in employment in October to December 2022, which is 108,000 more than the previous year. More than 15% of people in the UK are neurodivergent, and due to increases in diagnoses, due to kind of a lack of stigma, so improvement in that stigma, I guess, and more education, it's likely to be closer to 20% for that generation that's currently in school. And of course, there's an aging population, more people are comfortably able to be LGBTQ+, and sadly, the cost of living crisis pushes more and more people into the need for social mobility. So what I'm trying to say is, if a company doesn't focus on the importance of diversity, an inclusive culture, and a genuine sense of belonging, they will make less money and not have enough people to actually do the jobs. And of course, as an industry, we finally moved towards a focus on candidate experience, which is fabulous and totally about time. Well, shock, diversity is important to candidates too, woo! 76% of job seekers look at diversity when deciding on a job offer. Like, that's actually crazy. I remember reading one LinkedIn study that said that companies with a DEI team are 22% more likely to be seen as an industry-leading company with high-caliber talent. 78% of people aged 18 to 24 said that DEI was of value to them, compared to an actually already quite impressive stat of 60% for those over 55. So you're more likely to attract, retain millennials, Gen Z, women, neurodiverse colleagues, etc., if it's an inclusive, authentic strategy based on a culture that fosters that sense of belonging and can be a safe place for those people that actually fear discrimination. Hopefully we're all on board with the fact that DEI is quite important, but how do you actually shift the dial? Firstly, and a bugbear of mine, considering most of my career is in attraction, recruiting diverse talent is not just about attraction. If you take nothing from this talk, that's it. I honestly find it so frustrating, the number of people that want to put all of their diversity budget into a post and pray approach on insert protected characteristic here, job board. Now, I'm not saying that job boards do not have a place in attraction. What I'm saying, however, is that our attraction campaigns are moving away from job boards. We're more into search, social media, targeted advertising. So why would a job board work for a diverse candidate if it doesn't work for a typically non-diverse candidate? And secondly, don't we harp on about how diversity is embedded into everything that we do? So just putting our diversity strategy into job boards is really not going to do that much. And there are a number of tools in the market to demonstrate the traffic and time spent on these diversity job boards compared to some of our key sites like LinkedIn, Indeed, etc. I do remember one call I was on. I wasn't well, and I chose to be off camera. My name is Charlotte Allen, which doesn't sound particularly ethnically diverse, which is another reason not to target candidates based on name. This person was going off on one that I wasn't doing a very good job on consulting on the attraction of black females. And can I come back to him with a list of places that black females look for jobs? I answered probably LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, social media, through their own connections and networks. He told me to ask a black woman and come back to him. So I took great joy in switching on the camera and saying, yeah, I'd still say LinkedIn, Indeed, etc. And plus, there's actually no use in attracting candidates in the front end if your processes are biased and they don't progress candidates at the same rate, regardless of their gender, ethnicity, or any other protected characteristic. So it's important to look at your strategy at every stage of the recruitment process, not just at the front end. I'm sure you're all familiar with a typical recruitment process, and I'm speaking mainly about permanent hiring here. I know that there are differentiators with the contractor market. But it's so important to look at the data here to check where your issues are. So many companies look at their diversity data at either application, and if you're lucky, also at offer. In doing so, you miss some of the nuances about what in that whole process could be causing you issues. I tend to use the 4/5 rule, which for those who don't know, this is a definition, so I've got to read it, is that a selection rate at each stage for any group that is less than 80% than for the group with the highest rate shows that there is likely some adverse impact, i.e. discriminatory effects to that protected group. I also think it's so important to set recruiters up for success in this process. I have a few bugbears, and another one of them is that we're expecting recruiters and sources to find a diverse slate, to push back to hiring managers, to hold up interviews until they're considering all the different candidates. But at the same time, we're expecting them to hit their KPIs around time to offer, time to hire, time to interview. We're also most often expecting them to find candidates who are much harder to find, or your typical unicorn. The typical story of the HR is saying we want all shortlists to be female for a really, really niche tech roles, and the hiring manager wants the role filled yesterday. And there's a recruiter there trying to balance both of these things. We really need to give our TA teams the freedom to find diverse talent without being held to impossible targets. We spend so long teaching our teams about low-hanging fruit and how to find talent quickly, but there really needs to be that mental shift to allow them to find diverse talent. It's also imperative to focus on skill-based hiring rather than just looking at previous experience on a CV, or worse, a LinkedIn profile. I hadn't long been in my official DEI role, and I spoke to someone who wanted to reject all candidates who weren't from a particular set of universities and didn't study a particular course, which, by the way, was not relevant to the role. I'm here trying to explain about the Equality Act of 2010, equity, and how it's basically just a ridiculous idea. And he said something to me like, I've seen your LinkedIn profile, and until recently, you didn't do a diversity job. So what do you know? It was fine. It was an excellent opportunity for me to actually say that whilst I haven't been in a solely DEI-focused job, I have in fact supported DEI initiatives throughout my entire career. I've been part of award-winning ERGs. Outside of the 9 to 5, I've been a UN delegate for the Commission on the Status of Women. I've worked for Sherry Blair's Foundation, Young Women's Trust, Stephen Lawrence, the list goes on. But you wouldn't know that if you judged me exclusively on my previous experience on LinkedIn. It was a great teaching moment, and I was pretty happy when he changed his stance on such rigid requirements, started to think about the skills he was actually looking for and how we assess them. So with that in mind, the slide is here. Here are some solutions I think could be quite helpful across the candidate journey. I'm clearly not going to cover them all off because you can tell I can probably talk for England, but I'll pick out some of the key ones. So I've ranted dramatically about why DEI isn't all about attraction. Attraction definitely has its place, particularly with the use of good advertising. You can post your advert in all of the best places, but it doesn't matter if what the advert says is rubbish. So I do encourage the use of a decoder. There are paid ones like Textio, there are free ones like Total Jobs, the Cat Manfield one. There's no harm in ensuring that your language is neutral, and especially those ones that look at additional bias language outside of just gender. You can also step this up with a job optimization tool, one that calls out the unnecessary language and focuses on the length of the advert, how many required skills there are, etc. One example I find really interesting is the use of a good understanding of maths in a job advert. That's quite difficult to understand, especially if we're looking at people from a neurodiverse background. What counts as a good standard of maths? Is it the ability to count? Is it your times tables? Is it a GCSE? Do you need a degree? If it's not clear, no one will know. AMS actually have their own tool to support this, but I know Get Optimal is a great tool which also focuses on making the advert search engine optimized. What am I talking about? Shortlist screening assessment. I love stack and rank tools. I think they're a really great way for supporting recruiters and sources with high application numbers. I also love it when they pull in other sources, internal talent, redeployees, talent pools, etc. It allows the TA team to look at the total talent landscape, which then provides them with that top quality insights to be a trusted partner to the hiring community. But when you also add in the diversity information, caveat, as long as it's done in a clear, legal guidance, compliancy sort of way, it's a really great way of ensuring that diversity is at every step of the process and supporting some of those consultative conversations. I also love video interviews, probably not for the reasons you think. It's really difficult to see how hiring managers interview if you're not in the interview, right? We look for swift interviews for both the candidate and the hiring manager to make quick decisions. We want to hit those elusive time to interview targets. So video interviewing is an excellent way to do this. We also talk about the importance of a diverse interview panel, which often means the same people are rolled out again and again and again to demonstrate that the organisation is super inclusive. I actually spoke to a woman once at a conference who told me she was a black woman. She went for a job at a well-known engineering company. Every step of that process had a woman or a non-white person on the interview panel. She was quite shocked, therefore, when she started and found that everybody else was white men. And she left because I think her words were the banter didn't align with her values. Anyway, it's a great idea to have diverse interview panels, but much, much harder to implement. If you have pre-recorded video interviews, the kind where the candidate gets the question in advance, which is another way of being inclusive to candidates with neurodiversities, then you can have multiple people review them afterwards, ensuring there's a fair, non-biased scoring system. It's also a way to highlight if there are hiring managers that are persistently marking down someone of a particular protected characteristic, allowing the TA team to step in and provide support and education to ensure that that bias is stamped out. I also love, I'm going on about this shortlist screening assessment quite a bit. I love blind CV software. I think Vitae is good, AMS have their own solution. It's quite difficult to do it manually all the time, and also mistakes can come in. Now, the jury is definitely still out on whether blind CVs work. I think especially if you've got a hiring team who are really focused on equity and making sure that their processes are diverse. But there are instances where this can be of real value, particularly if you've got a manager that's only looking at certain universities and previous companies. Right, I'll move on. Offer and onboarding. This is such a key time to ensure you don't see dropouts for diverse candidates. but also start to get them set up as colleagues. Getting them brought into your company means they're more likely to refer other people, and some of those are likely to be diverse as well. I was at Indeed's offices recently, and what they do about DEI is actually really interesting. They run a panel for every new starter with all of their ERG leads before they join, to start to foster that sense of belonging and encourage them to go to join the ERGs when they join. Now, most of us don't work for huge global companies that have dedicated ERG leads that don't have another job, right? So one way to combat this is to record a video that is part of your onboarding comms. Even better, you could host an event, you could share the video, you've got live chat opportunity to network, all that sort of stuff. And of course, I do think this should be done virtually rather than face-to-face. Love Meet and Engage for this. They're wonderful at virtual events, but also have an amazing onboarding solution as well, which is make sure that you keep in touch with your candidates. And then they join, you get the information from them, you get their content, and the cycle kind of continues. AI can be a useful tool for writing these comms if you don't have a comms department or copywriter to hand. Of course, I'm urging caution with using AI. Could be known biases within that, but it is a great way to help companies get started ahead of their content strategy if it's used effectively. I'm going to stop here because otherwise Tash will tell me off for going over, but happy to talk about any of the other things at a later date. So this is my favourite bit. These solutions are no use if you don't have recruitment and hiring teams made up of allies. And none of this passive ally nonsense. I'm talking actively engaged, standing out and proud allies. We've probably covered a lot of these off during the rest of the talk, but I think it's still important to call out the importance of education. I personally prefer a passport to hire approach, constant training for recruiters, sourcing, the hiring community, all that lovely stuff. I was talking to somebody the other day about a Black colleague mentoring program. They had highlighted that they were not seeing the progression for those colleagues up to management layer. They were also seeing consistently lower performance scores than in non-Black colleagues, and they wanted to do something about it, which is great. So they had this scheme where they're mentored and sponsored by some senior executives within the organisation. This is something I absolutely have seen work, but similarly to a return to work programme, it can be an absolute disaster if the line managers are not given adequate training. Why do we automatically assume that these Black colleagues need more help to get their performance scores up? Why do we completely ignore the fact that they might have a manager that makes it difficult for them to be their authentic selves, that there might be microaggressions that mean they're not feeling they're in a space of belonging, and that they can't perform at their highest level? It is so important that everybody is calling out microaggressions. Everyone pushes back if a job advert isn't advertised internally. Everyone is calling out if a hiring manager's mate gets the job, if a new project lead is identified during a golfing game when not the whole team was there. Everyone needs to call this out. It's also very, very important for companies to look more at equity and inclusion, and I think the diagram kind of explains it, than just equality. If we are truly going to shift the dial, we need to genuinely change what it is that we are doing. We need to be bold, we need to be brave, and we need to make sure that everyone is on board fighting the same fight. And in fighting that same fight, we'll create an inclusive culture which will, as Claudia Brindwoody from IBM calls out, will lead to diverse teams that really can do impossible things. Thank you very much.